On Tuesday night, the basketball community witnessed one of the wildest shocks in recent NBA history. Although the majority of fans were aware of the new, more balanced lottery odds coming into effect this year, actually witnessing the shift caused by these odds in the lottery was very surprising to most. To quickly put into perspective how much the odds changed this year, the worst team used to have a 25% chance of the first pick and a 64.2% chance of the top 3 pick. This year and from now until the foreseeable future, the worst team has a 14% chance of the first pick and a 40.1% chance of the top 3, meaning that there's a better chance that the worst team falls out of the top 3 than the chance that they land within it. That alone should set the precedent for how pivotal this new lottery system actually is. The purpose of this video is not just to overview the effects of the lottery on this year's draft, it's to look at if this lottery odds system is actually good or not for the league, citing past lotteries, this 2019 lottery, and looking at the effects it could have on the future drafts. So let's start with the negatives.
I am having a very bad day. It's one of the worst days that I've had in a long time.
Before we dive into this, let's look at all the drops that teams had in their draft standing this past Tuesday. The Timberwolves and Mavericks picks, with Dallas is owned by Atlanta, both moved down one spot. 5 out of the 6 teams with the best odds in this lottery, the Cavs, Suns, Bulls, Hawks, and Wizards, all moved down 3 spots each. The Knicks, who had the best overall odds, also moved down 2 spots. This whole process made me think of Jay-Z's freestyle from a few weeks ago about the late great Nipsey Hussle.
Crabs in the barrel, but crabs don't belong in the barrel. They ain't never tell us that. So in the barrel, we gon' act like we act. We can easily get out the barrel if we stand on each other's back.
In that freestyle specifically, Jay-Z's relating the crabs in the barrel mentality to getting out of the hood. But I can relate it the same exact way to the NBA, saying that these bottom of the barrel teams are trying to make it out of the bottom of the NBA by using their high draft picks and make it to the top. But the problem with these bottom of the barrel teams is they just don't have really any way but high draft picks to propel them out of the bottom of the barrel. People love to rave about tanking and the shame that teams should have for participating in it, and now fans and players such as Rudy Gobert are raving about this year's lottery being the end of tanking. But is it really though? The idea of tanking itself is heavily exaggerated. You can let me know for yourself if you feel that these bottom 3 teams led by Emmanuel Mudiay and Kevin Knox, Colin Sexton and Cedi Osman, an injury-riddled Devin Booker, rookie DeAndre Ayton, and a coach who has already been fired after 1 season could have actually made it anywhere close to the playoffs? Alright, now let's take a long look at the positives, progression towards balance. The New Orleans Pelicans landed the first pick in this year's draft, giving them potential superstar talent in Duke high flyer Zion Williamson. Although this 6-spot jump by the Pelicans killed the hopes and dreams of a few bottom-of-the-barrel teams, and maybe even Williamson himself, there's a very glaring positive side to this lottery madness. Let's take a look at the history of the Pelicans, for example. New Orleans selected Anthony Davis with the first overall pick in the 2012 NBA draft after winning the lottery with the 4th best odds. Since then, the Pelicans selected Nerlens Noel with the 6th pick in 2013 and traded him and their 2014 first rounder to Philadelphia for All-Star Jrue Holiday. Failed to make the playoffs in 2014, and their pick that they didn't own became 10th overall Elfrid Payton. Made the 8th seed in 2015 and got swept by Golden State. They didn't have their 2015 draft pick because they traded it for Omer Asik. Got the 6th pick in 2016, drafted Buddy Hield and later traded him in a package including their 2017 first rounder to Sacramento for DeMarcus Cousins. Then, they missed the playoffs in 2017 with Cousins and didn't have a draft pick. And despite having a solid playoff run including a 4-0 sweep of the Blazers in 2018, they did not have their pick again because they traded it for Nikola Mirotic, who they've now traded for Stanley Johnson and 4 second-rounders. Cousins left New Orleans in 2018 for Golden State, while Buddy Hield was one of the most improved players in the league this season. Throughout these years, the Pelicans also signed Solomon Hill to a 4-year, $48 million deal, Alexis Agenta to a 4-year, $19.2 million deal, and Omer Asik to a 5-year, $58 million deal. I decided to use New Orleans as an example here to showcase their desperate attempts over the years at trying to surround a generational talent in Anthony Davis with, at the very least, a playoff team. The reason why these new draft lottery odds could be viewed as a positive because this is the most certainly a progression towards 2 things, one being fairly definite and one being very possible but not definite. The first, progression towards the end of consistent mediocrity. Teams such as the Pelicans, Pistons, or Wizards were able to draft 1 or 2 great players, but then had to force trades or overpay guys to try and build a sustainable supporting cast for their stars, generally leaving them in a mediocre state and never looked at as a legitimate contender by competition. Sure, there's still a team like the San Antonio Spurs that can consistently draft immediately impactful talent regardless of their draft position, but generally teams do need that boost into the top of the draft to have a great chance of picking a potentially great player. This new lottery system gives the consistently below average teams a chance at jumping up into the top 4 and selecting an immediately impactful guy. something that Zion Williamson could have been for Anthony Davis, although it seems like it's a case of too little too late for the generational talent who's wasted 7 years in New Orleans. And that leads directly into my second, more far-fetched but very possible result of this new lottery system: the end of super teams. It's relatively simple to explain, and it's definitely a plausible claim. The reason why 99% of super teams have formed is because a star player or multiple star players have been on teams who have been locked in mediocrity, but then don't have the talent to reach a championship level and don't have the opportunity to even gain their talent, so they join together to form an easy championship contender. The prime example being, of course, the Miami Heat of the early 2010s. The season before the Big Three was formed, the Bosh-led Raptors fell a game short of the playoffs despite his 24-11 average, while the Cavs got bounced in the second round with LeBron's second leading scorer being a 37-year-old Shaq. But what if LeBron's Cavs won the lottery with the 10th best odds in 2004 and drafted Dwight Howard? Would the Big Three have ever formed? What if Davis's Pelicans won the lottery with the 6th best odds 3 years ago and drafted Ben Simmons? Would he still be looking to potentially form a super team in New York or Los Angeles? The only possible way for LeBron's Cavaliers to improve at that point was to regress. They picked up 5 top 5 picks in the 4 years prior to LeBron's return, with one of their first overall picks, Kyrie Irving, coming from a Clippers pick that required them to become worse and take on a bad contract in order for them to acquire, something unlikely to happen if LeBron was on your team. In reality though, the reason why the end of super teams argument is much more far-fetched is because I can't guarantee something like the Cavs winning the lottery with the 10th best odds in 04, but I can confidently say these odds would have given a good chance to a fringe playoff team such as Detroit, New Orleans, Washington, and formerly Denver, Chicago, and Utah at landing a top pick and increasing their chance of drafting a franchise-changing player, rather than either having to make short-sighted trades and sign average players to absurd contracts just to try and compete, or completely blowing up their team to rebuild and reach the top of the draft again. And one last positive for the bottom of the barrel teams that do fall in the draft lottery: it's not the end of the world.
I hope so.
A top 4 pick most certainly gives you a better chance at a great player, and the number 1 pick nearly guarantees you an impactful piece. But remember, the best player in only 3 of the past 10 drafts has been the first man selected. That's all I've got for this one though. Let me know in the comments all your thoughts on the draft lottery and if you think it's good or bad for the NBA. Follow me on Instagram at both Knicks.click and All Day B-Ball. Stay tuned for more videos coming very soon. And I'm out. Cut.